Hello everyone, I'm Raijin Rising, and with the end credits of RWBY Volume 8, we now have the full track list for its vocal soundtrack. There have been more songs in the past than what we get listed here, but we don't know for sure. As harsh as it is to say though, I doubt any song from this soundtrack will come close to the level of Volume 4's This Life Is Mine when it drops as late as July, or even later. Weiss's Rebirth Anthem and many songs from Volume 4 are especially precious to me as part of a volume that defined what RWBY could be in so many ways after the Beacon arc. But This Life Is Mine will always stand head and shoulders above the rest as RWBY's most meaningful song. And here is why. For the most part, there are two types of RWBY songs. Songs about characters and about points in the narrative. Volume 4 is a volume that puts every character on their own unique journey after the calamity of Volume 3, is very character-focused, and the soundtrack reflects that with the most character-centric songs of any soundtrack other than Volume 1, which established them all. Weiss got This Life Is Mine, Blake and Sun got Like Morning Follows Night, Yang got Armed and Ready, and Crow got Bad Luck Charm. Each of them speaks extremely well to who those characters are at that point in the story, but This Life Is Mine does it in a way that no song before or since has. Beyond the lyrics, not even considering the lyrics, the composition, the genre, the understanding of what has come before, all play a role in listening to This Life Is Mine. Every RWBY soundtrack also has a few archetypes. Hard rock, slow emotional ballad, sometimes a pop song, throw a rap verse in there somewhere, and they're all tied thematically to a character's frame of mind or the stakes of the narrative at that point. In the early years, ballads were the perfect way to express Weiss's inner turmoil. She fled from her father to Beacon, but she hadn't completely cast him away from who she was as a person, even if she'd always wanted to. On physical copies of the Volume 4 soundtrack, This Life Is Mine is listed with Mirror Mirror Part 3 in parentheses as well it should be. I bet you didn't know that. I learned of it only recently. But I believe it should be that way in digital copies as well, because that's exactly what it is, down to the core of the music itself. To explain where I'm coming from, I have to take you back to 2016, when Volume 4 was still airing. The song appears first in Volume 4 Chapter 6, Tipping Point, with Weiss singing it at the charity gala to a bunch of people who don't understand what they're listening to. Only a piece of the first portion of the song is heard. It's an opera piece. At that point, we see it as a song entirely meant to be performed as Weiss performs it on that stage. It is the most Mirror Mirror Part 3 it could possibly be, as far as we could understand it. A rightful next entry of Weiss's metaphorical, somber conversation alone with Snow White's mirror. The Volume 4 soundtrack released 6 months later with the full song. At first, it started the same. Considering Mirror Mirror and Part 2, listening to it, you know what you're in for. Or at least, you think you do. And then... Amazing how you conquered me, chained me in servility. As soon as the material used in Chapter 6 ends... that is not what the song is anymore, because that is not who Weiss is anymore. Weiss always had the ballad, but not anymore. Now, she sounds a little bit more like... Yang's music had always been characterized by her unwavering resolve in the sense that she knows she's a badass. And Weiss isn't trying to be Yang. But Weiss's defiance has finally clashed with her father and allowed her the same resolve to be her own person, to define herself. So now, turning it to 11 is only fitting. And in case you had any doubts about it, Weiss sure doesn't, so she takes it to 15 from there. Every time I listen to this song, I am reminded of what it was like to hear it for the first time. To hear within the composition itself, Weiss defeat the royal test and be someone who breaks out of the emotional ballads. We literally hear her do that. And I haven't even mentioned the lyrics yet. I couldn't if I wanted to prove you could still get to all of those same points without them. But as far as the lyrics go, she tells the mirror, "Now we're done, this conversation is over, now my mind and heart are one." So she was always matching the image of herself in the mirror with the image her father put into her head of who she was supposed to be. And it never worked. It never matched up. When she cast away her father, she no longer had any need of the mirror. She knew who she was, and she needed nobody's validation. And with that, she can change her entire art form. I've been watching the show since it came out, so I've had the experience that Rooster Teeth has tailored for the show to give. For you, maybe you caught onto the show during a later year and knew a spoiler well before you were supposed to. Maybe the music is what got you into the show. Maybe you heard the song right and then you watched the show. Or you never much considered the music until just now. In any of those cases, it never hit for you the way it hit for me. And maybe you're watching this with at least part of yourself baffled that I'm considering This Life Is Mine over Armed and Ready from this same Volume soundtrack. And I wouldn't blame you. The Volume 4 soundtrack is absolutely stacked with greatness. Armed and Ready is right there with This Life Is Mine, but it's not the same. I will say this. Having it as the Volume 4 end credits song reinforced Yang's arc in much needed ways, given the little screen time she had that volume. It put it all into much needed perspective, and that song goes through much the same progression as This Life Is Mine does as well, starting out slow with Yang's traumatized state and kicking right back to a renewed Yang who's fighting for much more than just the thrill now. But it doesn't build from our understanding of the prior 3 years of Yang's music quite the same. And that's what I meant when I said This Life Is Mine is RWBY's most meaningful song. While lyrics can often do a bulk of the work for defining characters in the RWBY soundtrack, This Life Is Mine goes well beyond that with a kick-ass musical composition that subverted years of expectations. Composer Jeff Williams packed meaning into everything that song is. And that is why This Life Is Mine is the best RWBY song, bar none. Until another song does that, there is no contest. I thought about making a top 5 or top 10 RWBY songs video, but it just would have been an excuse to gush over This Life Is Mine. But we all experience music differently. This song has been living rent-free in my head for years, but what about you? If you love getting into characters' heads, their emotions, maybe it's a ballad like All That Matters. If you're looking for a bop, Celebrate or Let's Get Real are good for it. A character's theme song? Something like Hero or One Thing, then. Let me know down below. While you're around, like and subscribe. I'll see you next time. I'm Raijin Rising. Have a good one.